love how all these leaves just ended up right in front of my garage. I guess that's how life works sometimes. So, I was at the gym earlier today, and my gym, it only has one Smith machine. There are no freestanding barbells or anything like that. And during certain times of the day, it gets pretty crowded, right? And there are these two girls. One of them, she was using the machine, and she was talking to her friend at the same time. And they were talking about these two guys that she was into. And I couldn't help but listen on because there was nothing else for me to do there. I had finished my other workouts, so I was just kind of sitting there waiting. So she started talking about these two guys she knew, and let's call them Brad and Justin. Right, so she was saying how Brad, he was, I don't remember exactly what she said, but pretty much Brad was smart, funny, kind, pretty much all the qualities that most people like. But he was short and skinny. And when she said the words, I do remember this explicitly, when she said those words, her face actually just kind of crinkled up as if she just bit into a rotten apple. I mean, that was how severe the reaction was. And then she was mentioning about how Justin, he didn't have any of these qualities really, but at least he was tall and strong, at least in her mind. He could bench press apparently 150 pounds without any problems, right? So at this point, I mean, I'm not really out there to judge anyone. Obviously, preferences are preferences. You can't really critique that, right? But I just thought it was really funny just because she mentioned bench pressing. So I'm sure a lot of you guys are into weight training and stuff like that, so I think you're inclined to agree with me. The bench press is pretty much useless in terms of a measurement of a person's overall strength, right? I mean, it's just, especially on the Smith machine, just up and down. I mean, that doesn't really tell you much. Something like a deadlift or a squat would tell you a lot more, or even how many dips the guy can do. And the next thing was, if this guy's really tall, chances are he's over 150 pounds anyway. And generally speaking, you want to be able to bench your own body weight at the very least and go from there. So I think, I don't know, in my opinion, she was kind of a little bit misled in her thinking. But anyway, that's not what this video is about. I'll get into a little bit more about what this whole experience made me think. Started thinking about just how pervasive the idea of strength is in our society, right? There's the stereotypical idea where a lot of people just think of a bunch of meatheads trying to one-up each other, trying to, dominate things, force issues, and stuff like that. But that's not really what I'm talking about here. If you can imagine a presenter walking into a full room of people, it doesn't matter who the presenter is, where they come from, how big they look, but if they have that level of confidence, and you just get the sense that there's just some core of inner strength that's driving them, that when they go to speak, it just makes whatever they say all the more compelling. We have instances of that throughout history. That's the kind of strength that I'm talking about here. And even with physical strength, right, it's still a very redeeming quality, because unlike something like looks or your family, which you're just kind of born into and you're stuck with for better or for worse, right, strength is something that you can develop, whether it's physical strength. Like I myself, I started out, I only weighed 125 pounds for most of my life, right, and then I decided it was time to train up a little. You can definitely build yourself up through hard work and dedication, right? Whether it's physical strength, like the example I just gave, or if it's something like strength of character, where you just go through challenges that really test your character. And if you're able to develop yourself, you'll be able to surpass those challenges and really impress yourself and some other people. I think one of the main reasons why people become so fixated on just the appearance of physical strength is just literally, it's just right there in front of you, right? And while that's not necessarily a bad thing, because if you think about it, if you're developing yourself, if you're developing the strength right way to do things is to start out with conviction, right? So conviction in my mind is pretty much what's holding all that strength together. It allows you to establish your values, choose which values are important to you, choose how to develop them, and then choose how to use them, right? So if you think about it with the physical training analogy, you're building up your core muscles. We'll actually step back. You're thinking about which one of your muscles you want to focus on for a particular task. You develop them as you're going to do the exercise. You're directing your body to move towards that end goal, right? So that's the importance of conviction. And I think a lot of people realize this when they start out, right? Because I don't think we talk about it as openly as just regular physical strength. But the idea that you have to have a strong drive. It has to come from a good place. You have to have that strong drive. You have to be able to make it stick in the real world. Otherwise, if you don't have any one of those three things, it's just not going to work. And you're not going to have a good time. So I'll end this video with a quick analogy. Love these freaking analogies. Having strength without the proper conviction. It's like when you go to forge a sword, right? You're trying to forge the metal. If you just make that metal as hard and as heavy as possible, sure, when you're done, it's going to look menacing, it's going to be heavy, people are going to be intimidated by it. But when you actually go to use it, if you strike a surface, if it's that hard, it's actually going to be brittle. The chances that you're going to just shatter the blade are pretty high because the whole structure, it's just rigid. It's just one thing. All it's trying to do is trying to tank all that momentum into itself. Whereas if you have something like conviction mixed in, you start out with a plan, right? So you don't want to just use one material. You might want to make it into an alloy. You want to give it some flexibility so it's not just rigid and completely one-dimensional. You want to give it a shape, a meaningful shape. And with conviction, you want it to serve a particular purpose, right? So what you end up with is maybe a sword that looks a lot more bland. It may not look as intimidating. It's going to be lighter. But when you go to hit something, it's not just going to shatter in your hand. It's not going to be completely useless. It's actually going to serve you pretty well. So with that being said, I think, again, just remember why you're trying to make yourself a stronger person. Hopefully that's coming from a good place. And if it is, then you have nothing to worry about. And good luck on your journey. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Stay tuned for future videos.